Shalom, brothers and sisters. Today, I'd like to delve into the current situation in the world. I'd like to talk about LIMOS. It's a Greek word. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. Matthew 24, verse 6 to 7. The Greek word here is LIMOS, hunger or famine. On the 25th of September 2014, Rosh Hashanah, two calves were born that were extraordinary and made prophetic news. If you haven't heard about this, please Google it and look at these pictures. They were both born with a 7 on their foreheads. Like Genesis 41, they were clearly seen to represent 7 years of plenty and 7 years of scarcity as a warning. The prophecy showed in Genesis that 7 years of famine will ravage the land. The first cow born was black and had a large 7 on its forehead, representing 7 years of plenty in the black. The second cow was red and had a small 7 on its forehead. In the red, 7 years of scarcity and famine. So based on their arrival, 7 years of plenty from that time would have run from 2014 to 2021. And the 7 years of scarcity would begin at the end of 2021 and run through 2028. The tipping point in the world began at Rosh Hashanah 2021, and clearly we could see scarcity and problems kicking in. We are now 3 months into 2022, and it's rampant and increasing beyond control worldwide. In mid-2021, a severe drought in southern Madagascar caused hundreds of thousands of people, with some estimates going up to more than 1 million people, to suffer from food insecurity or famine. This is their worst hunger crisis that they've experienced in 40 years. London, December 2021, the Global Humanitarian Overview released by the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OSHA, warned that 274 million people could be in need of humanitarian assistance in 2022. The world is currently battling the worst hunger crisis this century. That is up from 235 million in 2020 and 168 million in 2019. 45 million people across 43 countries are at risk of famine, up from 27 million in 2019. 2022, countries that are known risks. Afghanistan, fear of looming famine. Since the Taliban took over and the chaos it's caused, they are heading straight into a looming famine. Syria, record levels of food insecurity and rapid inflation, only set to get worse. Ethiopia, more than 900,000 people face famine conditions and rising daily. South Sudan, food insecurity is at its worst level since their independence. Yemen, over 16 million people are facing crisis or worse food insecurity levels. Now, what does the United Nations have to say about this? The UN now warns that there is a hunger hurricane coming, and it's starting in Africa. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned of the hurricane of hunger and a meltdown of the global food system in the wake of a simmering crisis in Ukraine. Monday, the top UN official said 45 African and least developed countries import at least a third of their wheat from Ukraine or Russia, while 18 of them import at least 50%, which now points to a growing food insecurity. We must do everything possible to avert a hurricane of hunger and a meltdown of the global food system, he said, making a passionate appeal. In addition, we are seeing clear evidence of this war draining resources and attention from trouble spots in desperate need. Russia and Ukraine, the two warring neighbors, represent more than half of the world's supply of sunflower oil and about 30% of the world's wheat, Guterres said, noting that Ukraine alone provides more than half of the World Food Programme's wheat supply. Food, fuel, and fertilizer prices are skyrocketing. Supply chains are disrupted. The costs and delays of transportation of imported goods when available, record levels. All of this is hitting the poorest and the hardest and planting the seeds for political instability and unrest around the globe, which is what the New World Order wants so that they can bring in their system and rebuild, but at the cost of lives destroyed. The UN warned we could likely see the worst global food crisis since World War II. The executive director of the UN's World Food Programme is saying we are facing a catastrophe on top of a catastrophe. Global food prices were skyrocketing before the war erupted, and now many countries that are dependent on agricultural exports from Ukraine and Russia are trying desperately to find answers elsewhere. Meanwhile, severe drought is threatening production in other major breadbaskets of the world. Food prices on the shelves have been rising since end of 2021, you will have seen this, and is clearly visible worldwide and felt by all. This was influenced by supply chain problems as well. The Food Price Index, which tracks the international prices of items such as vegetable oils, dairy products, and so on, averaged 140.7 points last month, or nearly 4% up from January, and this is also 24.1% over the level a year earlier. The wheat harvest in the US could be disastrous this year, and if some sort of miracle does not happen, we will see hunger and famine on a scale that would have been unimaginable to many people. We are facing the perfect storm as far as global food production is concerned. Ukrainian farms are about to miss their critical planting and harvesting seasons. China is facing its worst wheat crop in decades after severe flooding and is planning to buy up much of the world's dwindling supply. India, which exports a small amount of wheat, has seen foreign demand triple over previous years. European fertilizer plants are significantly cutting production because of high energy prices. Farmers from Brazil to Texas are cutting back on fertilizer, threatening the size of the next harvests. The global energy crisis keeps pushing fertilizer costs higher and higher, having almost tripled over the last year and heading into quadruple. Absurd fertilizer costs will result in dramatically reduced agricultural production all over the globe this year. Famine will hit many parts of the globe this year, and it'll be a time of global famine. Even the United Nations is admitting it is upon us, and things are only going to get worse in the months ahead. The White House also announced in the last 48 hours that they're admitting that there is a famine crisis coming to the world. South Africa. Farmers in the Northern Cape, Western Cape, and Eastern Cape Karoo are struggling to control a biblical plague of locust swarms that have damaged and consumed thousands of hectares of grazing land. According to Agri SA, this is one of the biggest locust swarms in years. Northern Cape farmer Barry Nordier said the locusts had caused a huge amount of damage to his farm. Considering that we just came out of 4 years of drought and received our first rains in November last year, in the farms that they have rested on, they've caused absolute mayhem, he said. Nordier said he had lost the grazing land for his sheep. They left behind a trail of devastation, and this must count as one of the biggest swarms in recent times. It's covered an area of 5,000 hectares or 10,000 rugby fields. What we need to do now, this is not something that can be stopped. This is part of the signs and part of the times we're living in and the end. Pray and help. Matthew 25 verse 31 to 40. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides sheep from goats. And he will set up his sheep on his right hand, and the goats on the left. And the king will say to those on his right hand, Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him and say, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? And the king will answer and say to them, Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it for one of the least of these my brethren, you did it for me. The time now that is upon us is a time where, if you have the means or the ability, and this has not hit you as badly as it has hit a lot of other people, you as believers in the body of Christ, pray and get involved. Make a difference. Seek the Lord's guidance on where you can touch lives, where you can feed the poor, clothe the naked, help the hungry and the thirsty. Make a difference while we occupy until He comes to collect us. You can be the difference. You can let Jesus work through your life and touch the lives right now in this horrifying famine that is going to sweep the globe and take them into the 7 years of tribulation that lays ahead. Keep people in your prayers and actually get up and make a difference where you can and where God guides. And above all, keep looking up and keep expecting our salvation at any time, and tell people about Jesus Christ and their chance at salvation. Have a wonderful day. Keep the needy in prayer and in your thoughts. And thank you for listening. Shalom.